Hey everyone, this is Dean Howell and this is the Rising Sun Podcast. You know, after 20 years of service with America's heroes, I've had the chance to meet some pretty awesome people. They're patriots, mothers, fathers, wives, and husbands, and the best example of what it means to be an American. This podcast is all about exploring their joy and pain, success and failure, and telling their stories to the world. The conversations are authentic like the people, and we hope that you'll keep rising like we are. Now let's start the show. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and not of DoD or any of its components.
Take me to the countryside. Gotta get out of these city lights. Drinking my cup, got me feeling right.
Hey, what's up, everybody? So welcome to this edition of the Weekly One, or As Required. So there's going to be a change to this one. What I've found is that it's just too hard to do it weekly one or as required. So just get this out of the way. This is going to become the R check. So all of my maintenance professionals out there, I'm sorry, but it's just too much. Like between all the episodes that I'm doing with folks that I'm dialing in from the States or folks locally, and you know the production that goes into all of that. And then also every week having to do a solo podcast, it's become pretty hard. So we're gonna make this the R check, right? And so I'll kind of get into that where that kind of came from, the idea for that. But the bottom line is, stand by. This will not be the W1R anymore. It will become the R check. So got a few notes here about things that I want to talk about. So first of all, I was doing a career development board with a sailor this week, and we went through everything, and man, great sailor, real motivated to be here and doing well, right? Been here a couple months and already kind of, doing great things in the command. And but at the end of it, he was like, so Master Chief, I got a question for you. All right, what's up? He said, so what's up with the numbering on your podcast? And it kind of caught me off guard, right? I was like, okay, not really where we should talk about my podcast, but since we're going to talk about it, I'll explain it to you. And what I explained to him was that there's basically 4 different versions of this, and we've talked about this a lot before, so I won't bore you with it. But and then I went and I looked and I thought, holy cow, he's right. Like, it's all over the place. Like, if you go from the first one to the most recent one, there's, the Texan Connection, number X, and there's number X with a person's name beside it, and there's the W1R number, whatever. And it is confusing. And so I took that on and I was like, okay, let me take a look at it and see what I can do to improve it. And so, and I'll get into what I'm going to do with the naming conventions here in a second. But it really kind of like, the moral to the story is that it's reaching the audience that I want it to. Okay, so there's some people out there that probably heard that Dean has a podcast, or maybe they've watched it. And it kind of goes back to that one episode we did about haters. And I know there's some out there. I don't care, right? The genesis for this podcast is twofold. The first is I get to talk to cool people. I get to talk to cool people who have awesome stories, and I get to put their energy like out into the world, right? And so that's kind of the first thing, right? Like, I think the intent of the podcast is to be able to talk to these awesome people and get it out there. But then kind of like the collateral benefit of doing this podcast is that when I think about the audience that it reaches, I hope that it's reaching our junior folks. I hope it's reaching those folks that don't know much about us. And when I say us, I mean like kind of this senior enlisted, category people, but also kind of like, the people in leadership positions, the people that have been successful, because when I do the Texan Connection, or, eventually when I bring on people in industry or people that are retired. Well, example, Chris Norris, that's living in Thailand, doing great. Like, I hope that our junior folks, when they watch this or they listen to it, they gain insight into the fact that, hey man, like, your leaders are not that different from you. Like, we were exactly where you were before, and we are just a little older, a little more experienced, given a little more authority. But at the end of the day, like, we're the same people, okay? And so that is like the other purpose of this podcast, is to make sure that we're reaching the people that we lead. Like, if we can reach them and give them some insight, sitting down and having a conversation at a career development board is one thing, but a person that we lead, that watches an hour conversation between myself and a motivated, squared away, shit hot senior chief, it just changes their perspective a little bit, right? If they take the time to watch that, like, holy cow, man, like, they've been through a lot of the stuff I have, and they think a lot the way that I do. And so then it just engenders the support from those people to us, but it also allows us to connect with them in a much more real way. So it was really, I don't know, man, it was very affirming. It was very satisfying to just have that quick, like, 2-minute conversation with that sailor that was like, hey, I listened to your podcast. It's cool and all, but, like, here's some feedback that I'll give to you. I don't know, man. It made me understand that even if only like 5 people are listening, that's fine. Those 5 people that are listening have, I hope, a new or like a refreshed idea of who their leaders are. Okay. And, so anyways, it kind of made my day, I guess is what I'm saying. So, I the last point I'll make on this is that, if you heard that Dean has a podcast, I'm talking about myself in third person, but whatever, if you heard that I have a podcast, I get it, right? Like, if you're putting yourself out there, like I kind of am, then it feels like vanity, right? It feels like, oh man, he just, let's be honest about it. One of the criticisms I've received over the years is I like to hear myself talk. That's probably fair to some extent, okay? But this thing could certainly be perceived as vanity, but I think that the word that I'm looking for, or that I hope that I'm purveying, is insight. I hope that this podcast is giving insight to who we are. And when I say we, I mean people that are in leadership positions, people that are in positions of authority, that I hope that the people that are watching this are gaining some insight about us. And so if they are, then that's great, right? So anyways, like I said, so that feedback that I got from that young man was, your shit's all over the place, basically, right? And so I was like, okay, that's fair, man. And then I looked at it, it really was. And so what I'm going to do this weekend is I'm going to go in and kind of clean that up. So kind of change some of the naming conventions. Like I said, this is not the W1R going forward. It'll just be the R check. And, I think I'll put titles out beside it instead of, like number whatever, right? And I think the only ones that will remain like a numbered podcast will be the conversations that I have with folks, whether that's, online or whether it's face-to-face or face-to-face. So, anyways, and so this R check is pretty simple, right? I just wanted to explain to you that experience I had, because that's what the R check is about, is that I want to convey something that happened to me that I thought was important and that was impactful to me. But I also want to make sure that that you kind of understand where this thing is going. And so if you hung with me this long, I appreciate it. And real talk, I just want to say it like this. If you're hanging in there, this is a journey for me. I am not good at editing video, and sometimes I mess things up. And so if you're hanging in there with me, I appreciate it, because this is kind of a journey for me too. To learn. This is a new thing for me, and I appreciate my viewers and listeners that are hanging in there to see what's going to come up next, because I promise you there's big things coming, man. I'm recording this on Thursday evening in Japan, and then later tonight Matt and I are going to do an episode of the Texan Connection, and spoiler alert, we're going to talk about freedom. Big topic, but we're going to talk about freedom and what that means to us as Americans. What it means specifically as a Texan, and then how we have to behave ourselves and how we have to work to maintain that. Okay, so anyways, look, again, I appreciate all of you for hanging in there with me, and it's going to be good going forward. There's big things coming, I promise you. So thank you. Arigatou gozaimasu. And that's it for tonight. That's your R check, folks. Do your maintenance. Good night.